This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. August's featured entertainment includes Low Cash on the 2nd, Dogstar on the 9th, and Fortune Feimster on the 10th. Details and tickets on HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Hootie and the Blowfish rocks Merriweather Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland this Saturday night to celebrate the 30th anniversary of its smash 1994 album, Cracked Rear View. I caught up with lead guitarist Mark Bryan to discuss growing up in Bethesda and Gaithersburg, Maryland, before meeting Darius Rucker at the University of South Carolina to form the band for hits like Hold My Hand, Let Her Cry, Only Wanna Be With You, and Time. Hey, Mark Bryan, hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP again in Washington, D.C.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I recognize those call letters from my childhood, actually. I grew up in Bethesda and Gaithersburg, Maryland, so WTOP sounds like home.
Absolutely, and I recognize your voice too, and our listeners will, because I think you and I last spoke in, I think it was like 2022, a couple years ago, when you played the Weinberg Center up here in Frederick, Maryland, with your Screamin'
Great.
Trojans, which
Man,
they can look that up in the archives for all the in-depth dive, but just remind us really quick of how, the Seneca Valley roots.
great talking with you again. And yeah, I went to Seneca Valley High School, as did Dean Felber, the bass player from Hootie. We both grew up in Gaithersburg and went to Seneca Valley, and then I started playing with some buddies that I grew up with, and some of them had gone to Gaithersburg High School, which were the Trojans, and so we named our band after the mascots of Seneca, the Screaming Eagles, and Gaithersburg the Trojans, and this is Mark Bryan and the Screaming Trojans. So
I hope you had fun in Frederick after that last time we spoke.
I did. I thought that was a great little venue and a good show and a great crowd.
Absolutely. But this time, thanks for the abridged version of the high school people. Again, look that up in the archives, folks. But this time we're talking, you're not coming to the Weinberg, baby. You're coming to Merriweather Post Pavilion, legendary spot in Columbia. Hootie and the Blowfish, going to be on August 3rd, so everybody get your tickets. We're only on a couple days left to get your tickets. I saw you all at Merriweather a couple years back, but is this like a 30th anniversary tour of Cracked Rear View? Are you pegging it that way?
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing a big promotion around that or anything, but yes, absolutely, that's part of the reason why we chose this year to go out. And it's 30 years is a good time to honor what has been a really important part of our lives, and so the set leans, heavily on Cracked Rear View, and we've been talking a lot about it in interviews and that sort of thing.
Sure. I'd love to go, of course, obviously go into a couple, deeper dives into some of those songs. But real quick, just bridge that gap, right? Because we talked about your high school, but bridge that gap between that and Cracked Rear View, of how you said you and your future Hootie bass player, Dean Felber, went to South Carolina, University of South Carolina. So how did you meet Darius to actually form Hootie there? Were you like hallmates or dorm roommates or something?
Yeah, when I got down to South Carolina, I was on the fifth floor of what was called Moore Dormitory, and Darius lived down the hall. And then Dean was on the sixth floor. And so by, I guess, spring of our freshman year, Darius and I were doing a bunch of acoustic shows as the Wolf Brothers. And we decided to turn it into a band, and came up with the goofiest name of all time. And with Hootie and the Blowfish, and to us it was like obvious we just get Dean to play bass, but Dean was like, man, I don't want to be in another party cover band, and so we said, we'll also be writing songs. We want to do original music too. And so by the time we got through college, we did start becoming an original band, but it was covers while we were in school, and that was a great way for us to form as a band. Like you see who your influences are, and you start playing together, and you get a feel for each other's styles, and it was a way for us to have jobs during school, like by playing music, and that's everybody's dream, and we were kind of living the dream from 18 or 19 on. It was a beautiful thing.
I love it. I love it. Well, of course, and then the big breakthrough album, like we said, Crack Review, and as promised, this is sort of all about mostly about 30 years of that. So let's do a deep dive into some of those songs, because you know how you know this racket. I'll play your soundbite, and that'll give me an excuse to play, Hold My Hand. Then I'll play another one, be excuse to play Let Her Cry on the radio. We'll rock out the Hootie on TOP that way. Yeah. So the first single was Hold My Hand, right? So was did that blow up? You think because of the David Letterman appearance? Is that what launched it?
Yeah, it was doing very moderately well on radio, sort of just plugging along for like a new band that not a lot of people had heard of yet, but people liked the song, that kind of thing. And we were charting, but very low. And then when Dave Letterman heard it and had us on the show and held the CD up and said, "If you don't own this, something's wrong with you." Everything shot up, and we went from selling 4,000 copies a week to like 17,000 that week, and then just kept going up from there.
Yeah.
And then I think at radio too, we got a lot of people added the song after that maybe hadn't added it before, that kind of thing. So yeah, the
Yeah.
Letterman thing gave us a big boost for sure. And the momentum had already started, and a lot of other things happened besides that, but that was certainly a mile marker that you could point to.
Yeah, and I think there's video of you. I think he might have had you back on to do Let Her Cry. He became a big champion of you guys.
He
Um,
did, yeah. We did the
yeah,
show several times after that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that second single, Let Her Cry, was a Grammy winner, and while Hold My Hand was a upbeat, everybody kind of hold hands and can be like a happy unity love song or whatever. Hey, Let Her Cry was a heavier one. Was it true that was it inspired by She Talks to Angels, the Black Crow song? Was
Oh
Darius
yeah.
was like, I want to write like a deep.
He's like, I want to write She Talks to Angels for Bonnie Raitt. And he was drunk at the time, but he was in love with those two artists in that moment, and and sort of that became his muse, I guess. And he wrote that song Late Night, and
Like she
and
went into the
then
back to get high and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, he remembers writing it after being out at all the bars and everything and being drunk, and then
Wow.
the next day we had a show at the brewery in Raleigh, and he was playing it at soundcheck, and we all heard him play it, and then we were like, "Hey man, play that again," and we all just started playing along, and it was magic. Yeah,
The few songs I'm biased because I grew up with this stuff, but few songs to me are more. There's few moments, let's say, in a song are more powerful of like the pain and anguish in a voice than at the end of Let Her Cry when Darius goes, "Oh mama, please
yeah,
help me," and would you hold my hand? Yeah, reference to your previous hit. I always thought that
yeah.
was funny.
I always wondered about him throwing that lyric in. It's like, was he referencing the other song?
We'll never know, but it's a
Yeah,
great
and I
one-two
can't.
punch.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that always struck me too. Like, oh, there's that lyric again.
It's like in case you missed our first one, go back.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, it wasn't just a one-two punch of those two because it also had arguably the biggest hit on there was I Only Want to Be With You. Any memories? Any good similar like you just did for those other songs? Any good memories of the formation of that one? I had Darius on here. Of course, you have to ask if the Dolphins still make you cry. It's sort of it kind of goes with the territory, but the Miami
Yeah,
Dolphins.
yeah.
But I guess you were a Burgundy Gold. So yeah, would you ever try to slip that in there? Does Joe Gibbs, or I guess it
Whenever
would have been
when
North
I do
Turner
my
making you
version,
cry?
when I do my version, it's I'm such a baby, the former Redskins make me cry.
Yeah, the commander, whatever. I think they're
I,
gonna
I
change
just
it
say former
again. I don't know what
Redskins.
they're gonna change to again. Like the command, no one likes the name Commanders. At least go back to the old colors.
Yeah, I don't
But
know.
anyway, putting that song together, any good behind the scenes of how you came up with it?
I just remember, slapping a capo on my guitar after being around Dylan Fence. We were on tour. They would play a bunch of shows, and they would use capos and had these really cool licks on capos and stuff. And so I was like, man, I'm going to try that, and came up with that lick with a second fret capo on, and I remember also trying to make it like Pinball Wizard, trying to jing and jig, that kind of like sixteenths or whatever you call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember Darius hearing it, and it's saying it reminded him of a Dylan Fence song, and so he added that lyric, put on a little dearling sitting on a fence, and he was literally talking about singing a Bob Dylan song, but he gave the Dylan Fence a little props there, which I thought was cool.
I'm so glad you just mentioned that. Well, great Darius impression, by the way. That was spot on. But but B, I was gonna ask that because all growing up, everybody thinks he's referencing just Bob Dylan, of course, which of course is an influence.
Yeah, both,
But
both.
when I hear your answer there about Dylan Fence, another artist, then the Fence line makes sense. It all's coming together, baby.
Yeah, I was definitely inspired by Dylan Fence. They were a great band. And I'm still really good friends with Greg Humphreys, who's just still a remarkable artist. If anyone wants to look him up, he's doing it. In fact, Dylan Fence just did some shows last weekend.
Oh, well, there you go. See, you got
Yeah.
everybody look for their tour as well. All right. Well, and it may be time for one more on Cracked Review, and then maybe we can end with some other sprinkled hits you might play at Merriweather. But for just to round out Cracked Review, Time is to me amazing. Why do you think that song works? It's very different from the other three we've mentioned, but it's almost this like transcendent, like it's like Hootie sitting back, like pondering life and time and the space-time continuum, how fragile and precious this is. But
It
what does it
is.
mean to you?
You're right, and I thought that was I loved when it was sort of Darius and Sony writing the lyrics to that, and I thought I loved where we're headed with that. It was us at a young age. You're right, sort of thinking big, and I was all for that, and I stayed out of any lyrics on that. I think Dean did too. We just like Sony kind of brought in the concept, and then we let Darius do his thing with it, um, and it's a fine piece of music too, man. It's fun to play. It's a well-crafted song, great arrangement. Just everything feels right. I love the guitars. One thing cool about that song is, and Sony wrote the music to the song too, and the guitar solo in the song is different than any other uh, part of the arrangement. And so it's almost like it's a bridge. The guitar solo is like a bridge, and that's kind of cool, arrangement wise. I've always thought that was a neat thing about Time.
That is awesome. Well, you need a bridge because time is punishing like a wave bashing in the shore. You need a bridge to get over it. uh, that's the best pun I can do here on this coffee at this time.
You're
Uh,
absolutely right, dude. You're absolutely you nailed it. You should be a producer.
It washed away my dream. We need a bridge. All right. That's great. All right. So that's the 30th anniversary Crack Review. And then, of course, I'm sure you sprinkle in other hits from the other eras. Tell me about I Go Blind off the Friends soundtrack. That wasn't like on a Hootie album, but I always thought it was one of those cool outliers that probably because Friends was so damn massive, everybody was buying. I mean, it was Friends and Seinfeld that dominated the 90s on NBC.
I can honestly say I Go Blind is the longest running Hootie cover that we
Really?
still, in fact, we're opening the set with it this summer. And we've
Really?
been covering that song since 86 or 87. I mean, like this is maybe at one of our first shows.
Who did it originally?
5440, a band out of Vancouver in
Okay.
Canada, and they had a college radio hit with it when we were at school. And Dean fell in love with that album, and I found it at college radio. And Darius was working at a record store. And, we all just really liked that record. I think we covered two other songs on the album. They were a great band, and we just happened to record "I Go Blind" as a B-side for Cracked Review. And then later we got to tour with 5440 in Canada, and they were great guys, and obviously very thankful that we recorded their song, and just it was
Yeah.
super cool.
Well, I didn't realize you opened the tour with that. That's great. So does the audience go nuts right from the opening? Dun, dun, dun,
Of course,
dun. They know the song. There.
of course,
That's great.
it gets everybody out of their seat immediately, and they're singing along and dancing and clapping and
Was there ever any?
hold me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Was there any did the friend? I mean, we just lost Chandler, Matthew Perry, sadly. But did the Friends cast it? Was there ever any crossover of them saying thanking you
Man,
guys
I'm
for the
glad you
song?
asked
Or
about that. I'm really glad you asked about that because before they did the episode about us or about going to see us, Matthew LeBlanc and Matt Perry came to see us, or Matthew Perry and Matt LeBlanc came to see Hootie um, at the Greek Theater in LA.
whoa,
And they came backstage and like, shook hands with him, met him, talked about the show, both shows, our show and their show, talked about, and then a couple months later, we got this note from, hey, friends wants to do an episode about going to see you guys or whatever. We were so immersed in the media spotlight at that point that we said no. We said, please don't, we'd rather not. But they did it anyway. They didn't need our approval. I guess they might have put us in it if we said yes. So, you know, but we just said no. And I mean, on hindsight, maybe we should have.
You were just
But
overloaded at the time, but
you were so overloaded. I mean, SNL was doing a spoof on us where Will Ferrell's like a frat guy puking all over Darius's shoes, and it's like we're not going on Friends. Sorry, and then Friends just did the episode anyway, which I
yeah.
thought was cool. But the truth is that the two Matts came to see us at the Greek Theater the year before,
Wow. So
or
you
the
got to
summer
meet Joe. You
before.
got to meet Joey and Chandler before all that went down. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And
Wow.
then also got to meet Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox at a party one time in LA. And Courtney Cox was kind of like whatever, but Jennifer Aniston was super cool. In fact, my baby girl Marley was like 3 months old at the time, and her pacifier fell out of her mouth into Jennifer Aniston's wine, and Jennifer Aniston picks the passy up and goes, "Nap time," and sticks it back in her mouth.
Wow, that's crazy. Speaking of
It was
Marley and me,
awesome.
new meaning to Marley and me, right? uh, that
It
is
was
great.
awesome.
Great. These are the tidbits we get only by talking to Mark Bryan on WTOP. Well, before you've been generous, but real quick, I guess I need to hit some of the Fairweather Johnson songs. I'm sure you sprinkle them in. I obviously there was no way for a follow-up album to be as big as Crack Review, just not possible. Like literally, few albums in history, unless you're like Thriller or something, have ever come. That Crack Review is insane. But I have a special place in my heart for Fairweather Johnson. I love Tuckerstown and Old Man and Me when Darius goes, "When I Get There." I mean, come on, the peaks of Fairweather Johnson are just, I think, just pretty darn close to Crack Review. So what's your take on those songs or just that album in general?
I mean, yeah, it's us trying to take a step,
Yeah.
experimenting a little bit musically, lyrically. You can hear us stretching there from Cracked Review. And we didn't want to make Cracked Review again. We were in a different place. We were older, time had changed, the world had changed, life had changed, and we were just trying to adapt. And I think you can hear that on there. I don't think it obviously had the broad mass appeal that Cracked Review had, but we didn't know that was going to happen with Cracked Review in the first place. So it's not like we were going to try to make another version of Cracked Review. Like we just tried to make another great record. And I do think there's some great peaks on it. Some of my favorite moments are Honey Screw, um, and or Stop Cold at Dawn. Uh,
Yeah.
and I agree with you about Tuckerstown having something special. And, the list goes on. I think Be the One too has got a cool raw energy to it that I put Be the One on our set list for this summer, but it didn't make the final cut. But I stuck it in there hoping that we would pull that one back out just because it's got great live energy.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for going into such deep dives into all these songs, and we'll let you run because you've been really generous. But you'll hear all of these songs and more at Meriwether Post Pavilion on August 3rd with Hootie and the Blowfish. And maybe wait, do you sprinkle any of Darius's country stuff, or do you keep that separate? I guess.
Yeah, no, we've been doing all right. And then of course Wagon Wheel, which, is a cover, but it's from Darius's world.
It's that his version of Wagon Wheel is taken on a mind of its own. So all due respect of Old Crow Medicine Show, that was the one we rocked out to in college. But Darius says he's like the new king of the
I gotta
song.
I gotta give D-Ruck a lot of credit, man. Every night when we start that song, he yells at the top of his lungs, "The Old Crow Medicine Show," while we're kicking it in. And so, he knows where to give credit where it's due.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, come on, because you have and then at their shows they probably have to say Bob Dylan because wasn't it originally the chorus at least was a Dylan,
Of course. Yep.
not
I
Dylan
don't
Fence.
Yeah, no, the
uh,
chorus was originally Bob Dylan, and then I guess
yeah,
Catch wrote the verses.
yeah.
Also, nobody would know the song even existed if it weren't for Old Crow Medicine Show because
Yeah.
nobody else ever did a version.
Of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then Darius took it to the stratosphere. But you said you do all that's all right by me. So you bring it's a country fans, Darius fans. He joined us in like 2016, folks. You can listen to that for the country songs. But this is mostly Hootie, but some Darius sprinkled it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, on this set we do
Yeah,
those. We've been doing those too.
that's
This
great.
summer. Yeah, it's been great.
I love it. I love it. Well, everybody, come out to Meriwether on August 3rd. I really, really appreciate you joining us. Mark Bryan, hometown hero of Montgomery County, basically right up the road from WTOP. So it's always a treat.
Jason, thank you for taking the time and for having me on, man. I appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.